tonight. Julie, has anybody signed up for public input?
No, they haven't.
I have not. Anybody have anything on the board for the workshop? If not, we'll close it down and come back into session for the board meeting. Okay, board workshop.
That's the first time since I've
I'm glad
been
you
here.
got that. I missed it, unfortunately.
We'll call the meeting to order. Please stand for the pledge. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First item on the agenda is approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion? Moved by Pat, second by David. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The agenda is approved. Next item on the agenda is approval of the minutes of the August 6, 2024 regular school board meeting.
So moved.
Moved by Melissa,
Second.
second by Mindy. Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The minutes are approved. Next item on the agenda is to approve the July 2024 claims in the amount of $10,639,642.92. Moved by Ben,
Second.
second by David. Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Claims are approved. Next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. Casey.
Evening board, tonight we have Layla Belafai, ESP replacement hire. Joe Cargo, assistant boys soccer coach replacement hire. Bailey Drops, ESP replacement hire. Carrie Dunham, ESP resignation. Carla Edminster, administrative assistant resignation. Nicole Edwards, licensed school nurse replacement hire. Haley Grover, Big Fork assistant volleyball coach replacement hire. Jamie Guthrie, ESP replacement hire. Philip Hermel, language arts teacher replacement hire. Isaiah Keating, bus driver resignation. Amber Lewis, ESP replacement hire. Danny Mackey, 7th grade volleyball coach replacement hire. Taylor Nelson, ESP replacement hire. Amanda Pettis, ESP replacement hire. Jack Soltis, ESP replacement hire. And Jamie Wells, ESP replacement hire. I'm recommending approval of the consent agenda.
So moved.
Moved by Pat,
Second.
second by Melissa. Reminder, there's no discussion on the consent agenda. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Consent agenda is approved. Next item on the agenda is the ESP request for general leave of absence from Julia Brewster. Casey?
The leave request before you is a general leave of absence. There's no pay or benefit implications for the district. It is just retaining the seniority rights should the employee choose to return after her leave. I am recommending approval of the general leave of absence for Julia Brewster, ESP.
Looking for a
So
motion.
moved, David.
Moved by David,
Second.
second by Pat. Discussion?
Mr. Chair,
Pat?
Casey, we're following our normal procedure on this then?
Yes,
Following
this is-
contract?
This is consistent with what we've done for the last couple leaves and the contract.
Thank you.
Any other discussion?
Wishing Julia well.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The general leave of absence for Julie is approved. Next item on the agenda is our annual approved varsity head coach hires for 2024-25. Casey?
Before you, you have a list of the head coaches for Big Fork High School and Grand Rapids High School that are known for the upcoming year. It is required in Minnesota statute that these be approved annually. So I'm recommending approval of the head coach contract.
So moved.
Moved by Pat,
Support.
second by Ben. Discussion?
I've been asked a question and I don't know the answer. And it's because I know other districts are on a cycle, so every varsity head coach position comes up either annually or every 3 years. What it does, do we run a cycle on when we put out kind of hires when we're on a cycle for
Like, do they open up again?
Yeah, they open like, I know some schools annually around the Twin Cities do, but some in other rural areas are every 3 years, they will run a cycle. Do we do that or no?
No, I mean, this is the opportunity for the board to hire, not hire one of these people. So I mean, these are 1-year annual contracts, and this is that opportunity for that to happen.
Yeah, and I don't think it was about the board hiring. I think it was if there were other people who were interested in a position or something. I think it was more about that. It wasn't
Sure.
like really the board hiring. It was just if somebody gets in a position, are they in it forever until they decide to go, or is it open every so many years?
Sure.
So that was just a question.
Casey, could you just mention how we handle assistant coaches?
Yeah, so assistant coaches don't have to be approved either. They don't come to the board every year, and typically the varsity or the lead coach is kind of choosing those as they go.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Varsity head coach hires are approved. Next item on the agenda is approval of the 2024-25 ISD 318 handbooks. This is something we do every year for each of our schools and each of our departments that has a handbook. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Melissa,
Support.
second by Ben. Discussion?
Is this to approve all of the handbooks?
They're all together as one, yeah.
Mr. Chair, just a question.
If somebody wants to pull one or something, we could do that.
I'm sure it's in there. I haven't looked at them, our cell phone. I know we were talking about our policy and some of that was going to relate it back to the handbook, so it's
Yep.
covered in there.
Yep.
Thank you.
Any further discussion about handbooks?
I'd put a note of thanks and appreciation to the buildings and all the people that worked on these. This is a lot of work to bring these up to date and to make sure that they're consistent with state law. So thank you to the people that put that together.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Handbooks are approved. Next item on the agenda is to approve resolutions for the MSBA Delegate Assembly. Superintendent Gross.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Every year, MSBA starts working on its legislative and advocacy platform by taking resolutions from member districts to the delegate assembly. And that assembly then prioritizes and identifies which resolutions or issues MSBA is going to support from the group. We've been fortunate to have board members serve in that delegate assembly with both Pat Maduri and David Marty representing Director District 11. So it's good to have some voice in that process here. Our discussion at the work session last week led us to a place where tonight you'll consider 2 resolutions to that delegate assembly, both of which have significant impacts to Grand Rapids area schools and also districts across the state. The first resolution for consideration revolves around American Indian or Native American mascots. In 2023, legislation was passed that prohibited the use of American Indian mascots of a variety of types, and that legislation was problematic from the start. From a process standpoint, there was no funding to implement it, and as it turned out, it was applied and implemented in an incredibly inconsistent manner across the state, with some districts holding the same mascot being treated entirely differently. In 2024, this last spring, there was an update to that law, but the fundamental problems were really ignored, and districts were granted an additional year to make the change. And the updated law also required a reporting process. So during the course of this spring and the following spring, we'll be updating, we'll need to send an update to the legislature. The first resolution there identifies those 3 issues with the current legislation: a lack of transparency in how districts were identified, a lack of consistency in how the law has been applied, and then a lack of funding to make the necessary changes. Again, in the estimates that we've done, that that estimate to make the changes on uniforms, on signs, on banners, on, everything, is for sure north of $500,000, upwards to 800,000. So there are districts in the state that are estimating over $1 million to make those changes. And there's zero funding associated with this law. So the resolution requests that the mascot decisions be left to local districts and local tribes to work together, and that the state fund any changes that have to be made. That's what's in the resolution. I don't know, Mr. Chair, if you want to handle these individually.
I think we should handle them
Yeah,
separately.
me too.
So do I have a
So
motion? Moved by Pat,
Second.
second by David. More discussion?
Mr. Chair, Matt, just for clarification, no funding from the state, one of these unfunded mandates that the state put on us. If and when this continues to move down, where will that half to 800,000 come from? Our general fund? or-
It'll have to come from our general fund. Yeah.
So in essence, we're gonna be taking money from our teaching and learning aspect of it to cover this unfunded mandate from the state.
Correct.
Thank you.
I think it's a great resolution for the MSBA to take to the legislature.
So just because I don't know that the general public has a sense of how unfair it was applied, I think one of the observations was Brainerd and Bird Island, Olivia Lake Lillian, which is bold, both have warriors with helmets, same exact mascot. Brainerd was never notified, if I was correct, so they weren't even on the list. But Bold was on the list, and they asked for an exemption and were denied an exemption, but Brainerd actually never made the list, even though the two mascots were identical.
Right.
So I mean, some of this makes, and we are the Thunderhawks, one word, and we're specifically notified. But is it Montevideo? No. Yeah,
Montevideo.
Montevideo
Right.
is Thunder space Hawks, right? And they too got a notification, but there was no action and no denial.
Right. So there's
But
no,
we were denied because we put forward an
Right.
exemption.
Right.
So just so the public gets a feel for how inequitable this is being applied, that, and I mean, there's a whole bunch of them. That was just a couple that I think people can at least, that are close to us, where you can see where it doesn't feel good.
right.
And it's not equitable.
Right.
And I think that's what it was striving to do. So it clearly falls short.
Good point.
Further discussion?
Matt, I appreciate the research that you've done on this, and these observations are very clear. And it's going to be, I think, quite simple to explain to the delegate assembly, as Melissa has pointed out, why this is not acceptable. This is not what we as a state want to do.
I think this would be a good issue for some of our local legislators to become involved with it too.
And I think it's worth, it's worth acknowledging that, as a school district, we're not for disrespectful mascots of any kind. That's not what this is about. It's about issues like Director Barr brought up. There are 5 or 6 warriors in the state, and in each case, there's a difference or variation in how those were handled, and that's not okay. And in some cases, I think the mascots, that's the most deliberate, violation of the law was approved. And so it just casts a shadow over the whole process, and I think it's reasonable to expect a legislative process that's transparent and fair. And if indeed there's a change that needs to be made, that it's funded.
Great. Further discussion? All in favor of forwarding the Native American mascot legislation to MSBA? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
All right.
It passes. The second one is the seasonal recreation property. Superintendent Gross.
Thank you. In 2024, a bill was introduced called Seasonal Tax-Based Replacement Aid that would have changed how operating referendum property taxes work in school districts. And currently, any referendum taxes collected on seasonal recreational property go to the state's commercial industrial levy instead of that money staying local. The bill that was introduced last spring would not have changed the amount collected. It would just have changed where the money goes and directed that property tax revenue to the local operating referendum. So this bill would have kept seasonal recreational property taxes the same, reduced the cost of an operating referendum for the local district. In the case of Grand Rapids Area Schools, it would have reduced the cost of our 2023 referendum by just under 20%. And that would have been a direct cost reduction for our taxpayers. And it would reduce the cost of operating referendums already in place for districts where those exist already. In the justification in the resolution, I included some of the local impacts, and some of our neighbors are well over 30% that this would reduce a potential operating referendum, or in the case of Nashwauk-Keewatin, it would be a reduction of almost 23% of the operating referendum they have in place now. I also included the map that, again, when someone investigates or examines this map, it's impossible to look at this map and not see the inequity that exists in our state when it comes to funding. Most of the districts that do not have operating referendums are in northeast and north central Minnesota. There's no way to avoid that fact. So this would create some level of kind of equaling out of that, or some help to equal that out. The suggestion or resolution urges the legislature to approve a bill similar to Senate File 4995 and House File 4986 that were proposed last spring.
So
Moved by Pat,
Second.
second by Melissa. Discussion.
Just clarification, this is not any increase in taxes.
Correct.
This is only moving taxes that currently go to the general fund back into the area that they were originally taken from.
Thank you for that clarification.
So to clarify that a little bit further, for the individual property owner, their taxes would not change because of this.
The seasonal recreational property owners' taxes would not change. Just instead of the money going to the state general or business levy, it would stay local.
Further discussion?
Mr. Chair, it's a no-brainer for my set of lenses, but again, it's a benefit to the taxpayers in the end, right? Because, what did you say, 19.5%
19.5 or 8, yeah.
comes from the state, and it would be, if there was a referendum, it wouldn't be put on the local taxpayer.
And this bill or bills had bipartisan support. I think just the climate and pace and the way the legislative session ended, they just ran out of runway to get this done. I don't think we should assume anything. I think we need to keep our foot on this pedal, so that in the event we approach our community again, we can approach them with a proposal that costs taxpayers less.
And actually, Mr. Chair, if I can, going back to mid-90s when the law changed, we're really just going back to the way it was
Yes.
prior to it. Is that fair to say, Ben, from your perspective? So it's not that we're creating something new, we're just, so to speak, repealing the current law that's on the books to go back to the way it was years ago.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Seasonal operating referendum resolution passes. Next item on the agenda, approve the 2024-25 school board goals. Superintendent Gross.
Thank you. At last week's work session, we discussed progress made on the 23-24 school board goals, and I'm proud of the progress that we've made. One of the things that I think you've observed, the effort put into the work of our staff in alignment, and I think that is coming through more and more and more around our strategic directions. And so I'm proud of that work and the progress we've made. Looking ahead to 24-25, the goals on this sheet were updated from the meeting last week to include an additional component to the partnerships strategic direction, but it includes a goal in all 6 strategic directions: equitable access, representation and outcomes, culture, trust, engagement, and belonging. The 3rd one, evidence-based practices and student-centered learning. The 4th one, partnerships and collaboration. The 5th, clear and consistent communication. And the 6th, stewardship of resources. And it ranges from improving student achievement to continuing that partnership work that we know is important, to leaning into the curriculum and evidence-based practices work that we've been doing, as well as, communicating and ensuring that we're taking care of the things that we're entrusted with, balancing the budget again for this next year, and improving our fiscal stability. So I think great discussion, great goals. Again, proud of what we got accomplished last year, and the board did a great job. I'm recommending approval of these goals.
Motion to approve.
So
Moved by Mindy, second by Ben. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? School board goals are approved. Next item on the agenda, adopt a resolution to approve purchase agreement with the city of Grand Rapids for the sale of the former administration building. Superintendent Gross.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One of the objectives of our operational plan, again, tying back to alignment, one of the objectives was to eliminate as much excess property in the district as we could. And over the last 2.5 years, we've eliminated sold a number of parcels. We've sold a number of buildings. And this purchase agreement represents another step towards really narrowing down the things that the school district owns and getting those properties back on the tax rolls in the hands of people that can use them. The administrative building was listed for sale in 2023 in September. It was on the market for 330 days. The board, you see an offer tonight and a purchase agreement to consider. There were things that made the building challenging to sell. The zoning situation is challenging, and there were many people that looked at that building, but because of the zoning limitations, they weren't able to use it for a business. So there were a narrow number of things that the building could be used for. Once we sell the property, we'll be eliminating operational expenses. There is minimal heat and electricity still going on there, and so those costs will all go away as soon as we can get that sold. The closing date is on or before October 31st, and I'll work with the city to try to get that moved up if possible on their end. We did do some elimination of property, equipment, things that we didn't need. We worked hard in July to get that done. So the gym down here is empty, and that building there is basically empty as well. Anything that we need or that our community had indicated they want. So I recommend a motion to accept the resolution approving the purchase agreement for the corresponding sale of this property.
There's a motion to approve.
So
Moved by Pat. Second.
second, David.
Second by David. Discussion?
Mr. Chair, I just want to go back to when we started our new elementary process, and one of the goals was to reduce our footprint on buildings and stuff. And this is just another step in that process, as Matt mentioned earlier, about reducing some of the excess properties that we have and getting them back on the tax roll. And I view this as a good partnership with the city. I know the city's looking at property for housing and that, not knowing for sure what direction they're going with this property, but I know there was preliminary discussions about that. So I view this as a good partnership with the city as well in providing a need in the community as a whole in regards to that. But more importantly, we told the community back when we built those elementaries that we were going to reduce our footprint and look at the excess properties that we have and get them back on the tax rolls. And this is just another property that we're doing here. So my point is we kept our promise to the community that we're moving forward in that direction.
Further discussion?
I think it's the last property, or one more left.
I will abstain from voting just because perceived conflict of interest with Greta.
Further discussion? Hearing none. Melissa says they're not going to vote, right?
Right. Abstain.
Everybody else, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Resolution passes. Next item on the agenda, board reports.
And then one more, Mr. Chair. SRO agreement.
Oh, okay, thank you. Next item on the agenda, 2024-25 school resource officer contract. Superintendent Gross.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The city and the school district have a partnership that goes back many years whereby the school district has purchased school resource officer time from the city. And it's been a partnership that's worked really, really well. As we've discussed previously, as we've worked through budget discussions the last few years, it's been getting more and more difficult due to the underfunding of school safety revenue by the state. And as a result, during this last round of reductions, the hard decision was made to go down to one officer. I've had a number of conversations with Police Chief Andy Morgan and City Administrator Tom Pagel over the last few months regarding the changes to the agreement and the corresponding costs and the need for the city to recoup its costs and how that even changes on their end going from 2 to 1. While this agreement represents a 13% increase in the cost of an SRO, the agreement presented represents what I think is the best that we can do. I did check with the county on the cost of the deputy to see what that would look like in comparison, and that would have been more expensive at this point. In the future, that could change. So I recommend approval of the proposed SRO agreement.
Looking for a motion to approve.
So moved.
Moved by Melissa, second. Discussion.
Mr. Chair, Matt, the funding for this comes from which buckets?
It comes from our Safe Schools levy, and part of that revenue is aid, part of that is levy. And that is, for some reason, it's just not a funding source that the legislature has had any interest in advancing, which is frustrating because I believe that it's an incredibly useful stream of funding for the school district because it can be used on officers, it can be used on cameras, it can be used on curriculum, it can be used on all kinds of things related to safety and security of our students, which I think is an incredibly important thing. But it's just, they're resistant to make a change there. And that funding has not kept pace with the cost of, the program, the SRO program. And so that's what's kind of led us to this point. But we couldn't use that money to pay for educational, classroom teachers or things like that.
So where is the difference coming from then to make this whole? Is it back to the general fund again?
Yeah, that's where it would have come from had we kept 2 officers. We would have been supplementing the SRO program with general fund dollars that would have come out of the classroom. This is within the allocated revenue for now. So that's part of the reason why we needed to make that reduction.
Mr. Chair, just a point, and David, correct me if I'm wrong here. I believe the MSBA has a resolution on file about trying to get this increased at the legislature. And that'll probably come up again for this year at the delegate assembly. So just a point to make.
David?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Superintendent, can you identify how, when we're going from 2 individuals to a single individual, how are we going to make that adjustment?
Yeah, we had a meeting with Chief Morgan. I think Jeremy Nelson was there, Officer Nelson. Dan was there, and Darren Hofstad was there. And I think Ryan DeBay, I don't remember if Mr. Fulbert was there, but to sort of hash that out. And so we identified a couple different things. One is that, challenging times aren't always predictable, but having predictable presence can be really important. And so, and those times that might be more disruptive, let's just say, at the middle school might be at different times than at the high school. And so kind of taking a look at that. But at this point, they're going to be alternating days, if my memory's correct, Mr. Adams. And then obviously, unfortunately for us, I think those school buildings are less than a mile away as the crow flies, so there's an ability to get from one to another pretty quickly. But at this point, there's going to be a rotating schedule.
So we don't see this as a permanent solution to our challenge.
Yeah, I mean, I would prefer to have kept doing doing things the way that we were doing them. That's for sure.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Pat?
Matt, we still have an ESP at the high school that we call a security officer as well, right? That's still intact, right?
Yep, we do have a security ESP that helps with, some investigations and some of that work. So we still do have that, and part of his salary, I believe, is paid for out of the same funding mechanism.
So we have a motion and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? School resource contract is approved. Next item on the agenda is board reports. Owen, do you want to start?
Yeah, I can. I guess fall sports started last Monday. Alright, that seems like so long ago already. I guess that's all for now. There's not a whole lot going on with the schools, so. Yeah, Jaden will be here, I think, at the next meeting. I know she was at the eligibility meeting tonight, taking notes, so we'll hear from her next week, or 2 weeks, I guess.
Thank you.
Not much to report. Our Rams had a lunch and learn with IRRB Commissioner Ida Rukavina. She shared a number of grants that they administer and hand out at IRRB. It was enlightening, learned some things that I never knew they did as far as grants. So that was good. We had about 47, I think, people there. So it was well attended and well received. And then we had a workshop last week, which Matt touched on, where we talked about goals and some other things. So that's it, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Well, David?
Again, thank you. We had a goal-setting meeting a week ago, and I was particularly pleased to see that it was student-focused. How can we, as a school, help our students succeed? That was enlightening. I had an endowment committee meeting. The 318 Endowment Committee is accepting applications, and we'll be funding those. We'll be reviewing those in September. Boys and Girls Club is challenged right now with budgets, and we're looking at proposals to combine the two Boys and Girls Club from Greenway and from Grand Rapids into a single unit. And that's bringing some other issues to the table, including transportation to get kids back and forth. Again, the numbers. Boys and Girls Club is really important, especially for some of the students in our community who need that extra break. So keep the Boys and Girls Club in your thoughts. They are having a golf outing Thursday of this week as a fundraiser to help put some funds together. And finally, the ESP Labor Management Committee met. They haven't met since, it's been about 6 months since they met earlier, but called and kind of did some restructuring. Anna Lloyd has stepped forward as the management co-chair. Julia Brewster was on as the unit's co-chair, so we're going to have to find, with Julia stepping back, we're going to have to find another co-chair there. But it was a good, healthy discussion, get some issues out on the table as we move forward.
Thanks, David. Ben?
Nothing.
Melissa?
Just a couple things. Jaden Haybeisen we met with her as we're bringing her on as a new student board rep. So, and she has them all on her calendar, except for, I think tennis was tonight. I think they have their first game was tonight, I think. So hopefully they did well. I'm excited to bring her on. And then we did a celebration of Invest Early, closing out 20 years of kind of almost a research project and what happens if you kind of infuse money into young children and families and learning and socialization. And we know it works, but we also know it's really expensive. I mean, and there's a reason why nobody else was doing it, right? I mean, that's how I look at it. But knowing that what we learned we're taking, and I credit Jackie Skilly and both for really reinventing what is now going to be called Early Edge. And it'll be kind of that next iteration of what we've learned and taking what we learned and moving it forward so that students and families don't lose out on all of the good things that have been happening. But it was a thank you to Blandon for 20 years of an investment, and then kind of a redesign on how we move forward. So that was fun. That was that.
Mr. Chair, if I could interject, I just want to thank Melissa in her other role as president of the chamber. She had IAS come and do a presentation to the chamber members there, and David was there and I was there. Excellent. It was a great thing to do to get that out in the community on how it's being rebranded and the value of it in the community. So just want to thank you for that and pulling that together. Very worthwhile.
I'd just like to reemphasize what Melissa said about orientation for Jaden.
Yeah.
I thought that was very good, and Julie, thank you so much for putting together most of that. And at our recent summer school board conference, some districts are actually doing an orientation or a little bit of a prep course for potential future school board members. So I don't know, Julie, that might be coming down the road. Next item on the agenda, superintendent's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was able to attend that Invest Early celebration, and I joke a little bit. I was asked to serve as a historian, which, means you've been around a long time, I guess. But it was neat, and I'm looking forward to what 2.0 looks like. Staff will be back next Tuesday officially. A little bit different start to the year. We promised when we were doing this move that we would stay away from as much time as we could, so we're not doing a big kickoff like we've done in the past. And selfishly, I'm kind of bummed out because I love looking at all the staff and getting things going, but also want to honor that commitment that we made to them. So it'll be a little bit different this year. I say that technically they're not back till next Tuesday, but we've had staff all over the last, especially the last week, in buildings getting training. There's been special ed training. There's been curriculum training. Today we had, I'd say it's probably 70 staff in getting trained on the new literacy curriculum. And this wasn't a mandatory one. There would have been opportunities later to do that, but they came in now early to get a jump. And so just really proud of them for the effort that they're putting into that and how seriously they're taking it. And I think there's some real professionalism around the rollout plan. I looked at the sheet that we handed out, and it looked like it was a professionally made document. And so our staff are just doing a great job of helping our teachers get what they need and be prepared. Our building leadership teams met in here. We had 50 to 60 teacher leaders in here last Tuesday, and just again had a chance to talk about district vision and strategic directions. And then they got to go back to their buildings and do some planning to get going on the year. I think we're just getting better and better at that every year. And so really proud of that work. Tomorrow and Wednesday, we're instead of having a August Summer Institute, so to speak, for teachers, we're hosting conscious discipline training here, and that's something that our early childhood folks let out a couple years ago now, and it essentially is a way for us to, as adults, to step back from a tense kind of situation and identify what we're bringing to that, and recognizing that it's not just the kid in this situation, that we as adults are coming here with some stuff too. And the feedback that we got from the early childhood teachers was incredible. I mean, usually there's a few that aren't real happy, but this was a really good feedback. And so I think we have about 50 people signed up for that, and it was opened up to other districts as well. New teacher training, a couple different days for that. Our principals have been in for training. I don't know, Dan, what else am I missing? It's been a busy.
You covered it.
Yeah,
It's
a lot going on. So the high school is looking pretty good. It'll be in good shape for when staff are fully back. We were able to take care of a couple other things in addition to the project that needed to get done. There was some carpet in the smaller band room that was in really rough shape. It was probably there when some of you were in school. So that's freshened up, and some new lights going on in there. And so just some of those things that we need to do to take care of that building. It's 50 some years old. So a lot to do. Transportation is busy. They rolled out a new app and are communicating through that app. It's really interesting and neat. It is going to be the way that parents can communicate. They can find out ride time changes in real time, really. They'll have the ability to watch their child's bus as it gets closer to their drop off. We're not tracking children, we're tracking the buses. So there's nothing, personal information out there. We're not doing any of that, but it's also led to an increased amount of communication. I was talking to the office today, and they've received 2,100 transportation requests in the last couple months. They got 200 just this last weekend. So we have 2 routers down there that every one of those requests requires a touch and requires reconciling with, the routing that we have. And so those routes that we have right now are going to be adjusted, and as more and more people are continuing to trickle in and request transportation. And one of the things they've really done a good job of over the last few years is getting those things done before school starts as much as possible. I think the first year I was here, the lead time was like 3 weeks on a transportation request. That was just too long. So they doubled down. The staff or the board made an investment too, and we did some strategic funding of that, but that's really helped. And so they're doing a much better job now of being able to get through those requests, but the volume is just incredible right now. So that'll be interesting to see how that goes. And then I want to recognize our principals and directors for their work getting staffed up. It's getting more and more difficult to do that. And, the workplace shortages that we hear about in business and industry are here too. We feel them. And so it was probably one of the more challenging years, I think. I don't want to put words in Mr. Adams' mouth, but, we're kind of getting down to the wire here. But they've done a really good job of doing that work and making sure that we have good people in front of our kids when school starts in a couple of weeks. That's all, Mr. Chair.
Just a reminder, upcoming school board committee meetings, meeting dates are posted on each agenda. School board meeting agendas can be found on the district website and at the designated posting site in the 318 Educational Services Center. Is there any other business to come before the board?
Before we move, can I just ask you to share what happened with the tennis courts and sharing Jaden, who's a tennis player, and her insight on that? I just think that's important for the community to know because it's high cost.
Yeah, so in late July, we were notified that someone had painted a pickleball court, and I don't just mean lines, I mean an entire court onto our varsity tennis courts. And that may not seem like a big deal, but the way that it was painted basically makes that court unusable for tennis because they painted over tennis lines. The individual that did that, or individuals, did not have permission from the district, from anybody in the district, so we're considering an act of vandalism. It's going to cost thousands and thousands of dollars to fix. The estimate's $15,000 because they'll have to sand down that court to resurface it. There's no way to do it because of the type of paint that was used and the texture. So it's frustrating, and now we have somebody like Jaden, one of our student school board reps. It's impacting that team. It's impacting their ability to practice and play. It's impacting our ability to host events, because we won't be able to get someone here. There are very few people. It's like people that paint tracks. There are very few companies that do that work, and they're booked out a year. So the individual that we had just last year, and that's the other frustrating part, we had that entire court redone last year. And he said, I can come and do it, but I can't do it till next summer. So somebody just deciding to take it on their own to do something pretty, reckless, I think, and it's going to cost us money. And otherwise, we'll be removing our team's ability to do what they want to do. So really frustrating. We have been talking to the police. We filed a report, that kind of thing, and they're following up on some leads. But if anybody that's watching this has any information on that, please pass it along.
Thank you. Julie, has anybody signed up for public input?
Yeah, not.
Meeting's adjourned.
Thank you, Mark.